my last treat for tonight is Charles. And part of my treat is Charles is going to talk about Kairos Insight and Kairos Torch. So Charles, come up here and share with us, would you?
Just a heads up, I'm not much of a public speaker. I was 18 years old, and I'll be 40 in September. But I was 18 years old when I nearly ended someone's life. And whatever reason I could give you for it is no good reason. I was sentenced to 45 years in prison. I spent a year in the county jail, and before I went to prison, you can just imagine the pain that I caused not only my victim, but his family and my family. When I was sentenced, I was transferred to a maximum security facility. I was at the Indiana State Penitentiary, which is Michigan City. It's a maximum security facility. And to tell you that I was walking with the Lord would be not true. I wasn't. But how many times in our lives does the Lord still walk with us in spite of it? I spent 4 years in Michigan City, and I was transferred when I got down to having 15 years remaining. You see, in Indiana, they have at that time, it was you would spend half of your sentence. So my 45-year sentence was actually suspended 5 for probation, and it was a 40-year sentence, do 20 years flat. So after spending 4 years behind the wall at Michigan City, I had an opportunity to be transferred. And that wasn't something that I was expecting. I was quite shocked by it. I went into the counselor's office and they said, "Where do you want to go? You're going to be transferred." Home. Straight up. Straight up. But let me tell you, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for home. I wasn't ready for it. And now there may have been some good people there behind the wall, which I'm sure there are. But I just wasn't living that life. So I didn't see so much of that. I saw a lot of negativity. So when I was transferred, one of the first things we asked the people when we got there, because I was transferred to CIF, which is the level 2 facility there in Pendleton. And one of the first things we asked there was, when's the last time someone was killed here? And the look on their faces when we asked that, because they realized we were coming from somewhere a lot different than what they were experiencing. You know, they said that doesn't happen here. People aren't killed here. when you walk a life of sin and you do things that you can't take back, you're going to find out that you can get all you want from it. What I'm saying is that I found out, what scary really was. So to be in a place where people were getting out and you could see it, and then there wasn't an extreme amount of violence going on, it started to really foster that hope inside of me. I gave my life to Christ in 2008 at Christmas time. I appreciate the clapping, but let me expound on that. You see, at that time I was in segregation at this lower level facility and putting myself quite at risk to going back up to a higher level. And I had gotten a letter from my aunt telling me how much she believed in me and how she's praying for me. So a lot of times we don't see how many people are praying for us. But I know in my life, I've had a lot of prayer for me. So when I received that letter and before I was saved, I experienced just this shame, just an overwhelming amount of shame. And when our sister here talks about feeling like you could take your, excuse me, like you could take your own life, I just felt like there was nothing I could do with the one I had. But God, God showed me that if I were to give my life to Him, that I could have a new life in Him. It wasn't long after I gave my heart to God that there was a Kairos sign-up sheet in my dorm. And I signed up. And I believe it was Kairos number 5. And I was an alternate for Kairos. But the Lord made a way to see that I got to be in that weekend. And for me, having newly been saved, and to witness these brothers come in, and to just pour out the Spirit of the Lord was just so overwhelming. And I knew in my heart that is what I wanted. To continue in the Lord and to be able to serve as they were serving. But that service doesn't start once we're out. It starts while you're inside. But it's an encouragement from our brothers and sisters who come in, and for us it was men who came in and served for us. But it was such an inspiration for us to keep that going. And when the weekend was over, it's just as Evelyn mentioned, they would rotate, and they would come in every week. There'd be 2, possibly 3, and sometimes only 1 volunteer. But just with that 1 or 2 volunteers, they were able to come in and we could have a weekly get-together where we sit and we talk with one another. And having that sense of community is a real vital aspect to our health and our walk with Christ while we're inside. So I had an experience as I continued through my incarceration to be leveled down. Thank you, sister, for this Kleenex. But when I leveled down, I had signed up for a level 1 facility called IREF, which is no longer, sadly, open. But I signed up for that facility and I wasn't granted to go there. Instead, I went to another level 1 facility. And at this time, I had been saved for 5 years, or roughly about that time. But when I went to that level 1 facility, I knew that it wasn't for me. It just was, the atmosphere was just too frantic and intense. So in order to be able to go to a different facility, I had to do something where it's called taking a write-up, where you get a write-up in order to bump your level up. I assumed that I would be transferred back to the Pendleton facility, which was next door to the level 1 facility that I was at. But I wasn't. I was transferred to a facility in Westfield, which is one of the rougher prisons that I've experienced. Even with my experience at Michigan City, that facility is just a really hard place to do time. There was a Kairos there. And even through my darkest times after being saved, and in that facility, which was a dark time for me, I still had the hope that Jesus had given me. And the Kairos was just there when I needed them to be. So I was able to participate in a reunion weekend. And even though I didn't know those volunteers, I knew the ministry. So for me, it just gave me hope. And sometimes that's all you're holding on to while you're inside. It's just this bare thread of hope. And for me, that was my experience because of the years of incarceration I had spent. And at the time that I was released, from that facility, the time that my level dropped, there was a counselor. His name was Mr. Deloney. I remember his name. His name was Mr. Deloney. And I had told him what had happened to me in the previous facility. And he told me, he said, you just have to remain conduct clear for a year. And he said, I'll get you to IREF. And he made good on his promise after that year. And he got me to that level 1 facility. And let me tell you, there was a Kairos there too. So for me, I may not have seen all the familiar faces that I had known throughout the years, but I got to meet new faces. I got to meet new people, new brothers in the ministry. I was released in 2017. And I don't know if I could have been any more ready. Because I feel like even though I went through this experience there at Westfield, I feel like God allowed me to go through that so I could see that I could handle myself under hard situations and not act out violently. My wife reminded me this evening. I was invited to a birthday party from a Kairos brother, and that's where I met my wife. I've been invited as a participant of the Great Banquet by Kairos members. I was asked if I would be interested in serving in the juvenile ministry from a Kairos. So when we talk about continuing ministry, we all have a role to play. And with that, I just want to thank everyone for having me here tonight. God bless you.